It all started on a Tuesday evening, one of those ordinary days that you think will blend into all the others until something happens that changes everything. I had been married to Sarah for 3 years, and her son Michael had just turned 16. Our relationship was complicated. He was a quiet teenager who mostly kept to himself, rarely engaging in conversation beyond the bare minimum. Sarah and I had tried everything to connect with him. Family dinners, movie nights, even that disastrous camping trip last summer where he spent the entire time on his phone. That Tuesday, I came home from work earlier than usual. My meeting had been canceled, and I was looking forward to a quiet evening. Sarah wouldn't be home until late. She was attending a conference out of town. As I walked through the front door, I noticed something strange. Michael's backpack was by the door, but his shoes were missing. Usually he kicked them off right there and left them for someone else to trip over. I called out his name, but there was no response. The house was unusually quiet. I checked the living room, kitchen, even the backyard, but no sign of him. Then I heard it, a faint sound coming from upstairs from the bathroom, water running. That wasn't unusual in itself, but something about the timing felt off. Michael never showered this early. He was a night showerer, always waiting until just before bed. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed the bathroom door was slightly ajar. Steam was billowing out into the hallway. I was about to call out again when I heard something else, a muffled sound, like someone talking. But Michael was alone in the house. I crept closer, my heart starting to pound for reasons I couldn't quite explain. What I saw through that crack in the door would set in motion a series of events that I never could have predicted, events that would test my marriage, my sanity, and my understanding of right and wrong. I pushed the door slightly, just enough to see inside. The mirror was fogged up completely, the shower curtain drawn. Michael was definitely in there, but he wasn't alone. I could hear 2 voices now, though one was faint, coming from a phone or tablet. "You need to be more careful," Michael was saying, his voice tense. "If she finds out—" I know," replied the other voice, female and young. "But you promised you'd help me. This is the only way." My blood ran cold. Who was this girl? What was Michael involved in? And why were they having this conversation while he was in the shower? It made no sense. I stood there, frozen in the doorway, my mind racing through possibilities. Drugs, something illegal, or worse, something that would put him in danger. As his step-parent, I felt a responsibility to intervene, but I also didn't want to betray his trust completely. Sarah and I had been working so hard to build some kind of relationship with him. The water shut off suddenly, and I panicked. I couldn't let him know I'd been listening. I quickly but quietly retreated down the hall and into our bedroom, closing the door behind me. My heart was hammering against my ribs. What had I just stumbled into? A few minutes later, I heard Michael's bedroom door open and close. I waited another 10 minutes before emerging, trying to act casual as I went downstairs to the kitchen. I needed to appear as if I'd just gotten home. "Hey, Michael," I called out, trying to sound cheerful. "Didn't expect you home from school already." There was no response. I walked to the bottom of the stairs and called again. Still nothing. I climbed the stairs and knocked on his door. "Michael, everything okay in there?" The door opened a crack, and his face appeared pale and tense. "Oh, hey. Didn't hear you come in. Just got home. Early day at work. You feeling all right? You look a little off." "I'm fine, just tired. Long day at school." He was lying. I could see it in his eyes and the way he wouldn't quite meet my gaze. But what was he lying about? And who was that girl in the bathroom with him? That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that fogged bathroom, heard those muffled voices. Sarah was still away, and the house felt too quiet, too full of secrets. At around 2 a.m., I gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I passed Michael's room, I noticed his door was slightly open, and a light was on. I hesitated, then crept closer. Through the crack, I could see him sitting at his desk, staring at his laptop screen. He was wearing headphones, completely absorbed in whatever he was watching. I should have walked away. I should have respected his privacy. But that conversation from earlier kept playing in my mind. If she finds out, who was she? Me? Sarah? Someone else? I watched for a few minutes, trying to make out what was on his screen. It looked like some kind of forum or chat room. Then suddenly, he minimized the window and opened another. This one was different. It looked like a bank account or financial statement. My heart sank. Was he involved in something illegal? Hacking? Fraud? I was about to retreat when I heard a notification sound from his phone, which was lying on the bed beside him. He picked it up, and I could see the screen light up. It was a text message from an unsaved number. The preview read, "Did you get it? We need to move fast before they notice. Move fast, before who notices." My mind was spinning with possibilities, each worse than the last. I had to do something, but what? Confront him, tell Sarah, or try to find out more first? The next morning, I decided to call Sarah. I needed to tell her something, but how much? I didn't want to worry her unnecessarily, especially since she was away at an important conference. "Hey, how's it going?" she asked when she answered. "Everything okay with Michael?" Yeah, I think so," I replied, trying to sound casual. "He's been a bit quiet, but that's not unusual for him. Did you two talk at all?" "Not really. He's been spending a lot of time in his room." There was a pause on the other end. "He's been like that for a few weeks now. I was hoping it was just a phase." "Did he mention anything about a girl?" My heart skipped a beat. "No, why? Is there someone you're worried about?" "Not specifically, just, I don't know, mother's intuition, I guess. He seems different lately. More secretive." We talked for a few more minutes, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her what I'd seen. What if I was overreacting? What if it was all innocent? I didn't want to damage my relationship with Michael further by jumping to conclusions, but as we hung up, I made a decision. I needed to find out what was going on, for Michael's sake, for Sarah's sake, and for our family's sake. And I had a sinking feeling that whatever it was much bigger than a teenage romance or typical high school drama. The next few days were a blur of normalcy and suspicion. Michael went to school, came home, did his homework, and retreated to his room. On the surface, everything seemed fine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I found myself watching him more closely, looking for signs of what he might be involved in. Was he using drugs? Stealing? Something worse? But I saw nothing obvious. No changes in his behavior. No suspicious items in his room. No unusual comings and goings. Then, on Friday, something happened that confirmed my worst fears. I was doing laundry when I checked the pockets of his jeans before washing them. Inside, I found a folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was a receipt from a hardware store, dated 2 days ago. The items listed were rope, duct tape, and a utility knife. My blood ran cold. What could a 16-year-old possibly need with those items? And why would he hide the receipt? I immediately thought of the worst possibilities. Was he planning to harm someone, or himself? I knew I had to confront him, but I was terrified. What if he reacted badly? What if my suspicions were right? I spent the rest of the day agonizing over what to do. Should I call Sarah, the police, or should I talk to Michael first? That evening I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I knocked on his door, my heart pounding. "Michael, can we talk for a minute?" He opened the door, his expression wary. "What's up?" I held up the receipt. "I found this in your pocket when I was doing laundry. Can you tell me what you needed these things for?" His face went pale, and for a moment, I saw panic in his eyes. Then, just as quickly, his expression hardened. "None of your business," he said, trying to close the door. I put my foot in the way. "Michael, this is serious. Rope, duct tape, a utility knife? You have to tell me what's going on." He glared at me, his jaw tight. I said, "It's none of your business. You're not my dad." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew he struggled with accepting me as part of the family, but to hear it so bluntly was devastating. "I may not be your dad," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "but I care about you. And I'm worried. Please, just tell me what's going on." For a moment I thought he might open up. His expression softened slightly, and he looked away, as if debating with himself. Then, his phone buzzed, and he glanced at it. Whatever he saw made his expression harden again. "I have to go," he said, pushing past me. "I'm meeting some friends." "Michael, wait, we're not done here." But he was already halfway down the stairs, grabbing his jacket and heading for the door. I followed him, but by the time I reached the front door, he was gone. I stood there, feeling helpless and more scared than ever. Something was terribly wrong, and I had no idea how to stop it. The weekend passed in a state of constant anxiety. Michael came home late that night, refusing to answer any of my questions. Sarah was due back on Sunday, and I didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified. On one hand, she might be able to get through to him in a way I couldn't. On the other, what if he was in real danger, and I was the only one who knew? Saturday afternoon, I decided to search his room while he was out. I felt guilty violating his privacy like this, but my concern for his safety outweighed my guilt. I started with his desk, carefully going through his drawers and papers. Nothing unusual there. School assignments, doodles, the typical teenage stuff. Next, I checked his closet. Most of it was clothes and shoes, but in the back, behind a stack of old board games, I found a shoebox. Inside was a collection of items that made my blood run cold: burner phones, several wads of cash, and a small notebook filled with what looked like coded messages. I sat on his bed, my hands shaking as I flipped through the notebook. It was written in some kind of cipher, but even without being able to read it, I could tell this was serious. The meticulous organization, the careful encoding. This wasn't just teenage mischief. This was something much bigger, much more dangerous. As I put everything back exactly as I'd found it, I noticed something else taped to the underside of the shoebox lid. It was a photograph, folded in half. I unfolded it carefully, my heart pounding. It was a picture of Michael with a girl I didn't recognize, maybe a year or two younger than him. They were smiling, arms around each other, looking happy and carefree. But what caught my attention was the background. It was taken in front of a house I recognized, though I couldn't immediately place why. I took a photo of the picture with my phone, then put everything back. I needed to figure out where that house was, and who that girl was. I had a sinking feeling she was the key to understanding what Michael was involved in. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the photograph, trying to place the house. It wasn't until the early hours of the morning that it hit me. It was the old Miller place, a few blocks from our neighborhood. It had been empty for years, ever since Mr. Miller passed away and his children moved away. What could Michael be doing at an abandoned house? And who was this girl? The questions swirled in my mind as I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, knowing that Sunday would bring Sarah's return, and with it, decisions I wasn't sure I was ready to make. Sarah arrived home Sunday afternoon, tired but happy to see us. Michael had been out all morning, claiming he was working on a school project with friends. I hadn't told her anything yet, wanting to wait until we could talk privately. "Something's wrong," she said immediately, setting down her bags. "I can see it on your face. Is it Michael?" I nodded, leading her into the living room and closing the door. "I don't know where to start," I admitted. "He's been acting strange for weeks. Then on Tuesday I came home early and heard him in the shower with someone." Sarah's eyes widened. "With someone? A girl?" "I think so. They were talking about something secretive. Then on Friday, I found a receipt in his pocket for rope, duct tape, and a utility knife." Sarah's face went pale. "Oh my God. Did you ask him about it?" "I tried. He got defensive, said it was none of my business, and stormed out. Yesterday, I searched his room while he was out." "You what?" Sarah looked shocked, but also worried. "Did you find anything?" I took out my phone and showed her the picture I'd taken of the photograph. "I found this in a shoebox in his closet, along with burner phones, cash, and a notebook written in code." Sarah stared at the photo, her expression changing from shock to recognition. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no. What? Do you know who this is?" "That's Emily Miller," she said, her voice trembling. "Her family moved away about 2 years ago, after her father died. She and Michael were close, very close." "Close how?" "They were best friends since elementary school. But it was more than that, I think. They were inseparable. When her family decided to move, Michael was devastated. He barely spoke for a month. I stared at the photo, then at Sarah. But her family moved away. What's she doing back? And why is Michael involved in something that requires burner phones and coded messages?" Sarah shook her head, looking as confused and scared as I felt. "I don't know. But we need to find out. This is much bigger than typical teenage rebellion." Just then, we heard the front door open. Michael was home. Sarah and I exchanged a look, knowing that our conversation was far from over, but that we needed to face this together. Michael walked into the living room, stopping short when he saw us sitting there, our expressions serious. "What's up?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing. "Sit down, Michael," Sarah said, her voice gentle but firm. "We need to talk." He hesitated, then sat in the armchair across from us, his expression wary. "If this is about the receipt, I can explain. It's about more than that," I said. "We're worried about you. Something's going on, and you need to tell us what it is." Michael looked from Sarah to me, his jaw tight. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sarah held up the photo of him and Emily. "We found this, Michael, along with some other things in your room. Burner phones, cash, a coded notebook. We need to know what's going on." For a moment, Michael's expression was pure panic. Then his face hardened again. "You went through my room?" You had no right. We had every right, Sarah said, her voice rising slightly. We're your parents, and you're clearly involved in something dangerous. We need to help you, but we can't if you won't talk to us. You can't help, Michael said, standing up. You don't understand. Just leave it alone. He started to leave, but I blocked his way. Michael, please. Whatever this is, we can face it together. But you need to trust us. He looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw not defiance but fear in his eyes. You don't know what you're asking, he said quietly. Some things are better left alone. Emily, Sarah said softly. This is about Emily, isn't it? Michael flinched at her name, his composure cracking. I can't, he whispered, looking away. I promised. Promised who? I asked. Emily, is she in trouble? He shook his head, not meeting our eyes. I need to go, he said, pushing past me. I'm late. Late for what? Sarah called after him, but he was already out the door. We stood there in silence, the weight of what we'd learned hanging heavily in the air. Emily Miller. The abandoned house, the burner phones and coded messages. It was all connected somehow, but how? And what had Michael promised? We need to find out more about Emily's family, I said finally. Why they really moved away, what happened to her father. Sarah nodded, her expression determined. And we need to find out where Michael's really going when he says he's with friends. As we made our plans, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were running out of time. Whatever Michael was involved in, it was bigger and more dangerous than we could imagine. And I had a terrible feeling that the unforgivable part of this story was yet to come. The next few days were a whirlwind of investigation and worry. Sarah reached out to some old friends who had known the Miller family, trying to piece together what had really happened 2 years ago. Meanwhile, I kept a close eye on Michael, following him when I could without being too obvious. What we discovered was disturbing. According to Sarah's sources, Mr. Miller's death hadn't been as straightforward as everyone thought. The official cause was listed as a heart attack, but there were rumors. Whispers of foul play, of business deals gone wrong, of people who weren't what they seemed. Even more troubling was what we learned about Emily. After her father's death, she and her mother had moved away suddenly, leaving behind most of their belongings. No one had heard from them since. It was as if they had vanished off the face of the earth. Meanwhile, Michael's behavior grew more erratic. He was coming home later, sometimes not until the early hours of the morning. He was jumpy, constantly checking his phone, and any attempt we made to talk to him was met with a wall of silence. On Wednesday night, I decided to follow him. He left around 9 p.m., claiming he was going to a friend's house to study. I waited a few minutes, then got in my car and followed at a distance. He didn't go to a friend's house. Instead, he drove to the old Miller place, parking a block away and approaching on foot. I parked and followed, keeping to the shadows as he slipped around to the back of the house. I waited for a few minutes, then cautiously approached. The back door was slightly ajar, and I could hear voices inside. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The house was dark and dusty, filled with furniture covered in white sheets. In the center of what must have been the living room, a flashlight sat on the floor, casting eerie shadows. Michael was there, along with 2 other people, a boy and a girl, both around his age. The girl turned when she heard me enter, and my heart stopped. It was Emily Miller, older than in the photograph, but unmistakably the same person. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "Who are you?" I countered, looking from her to Michael. "What is this?" "Get out of here," Michael said, stepping between us. "This doesn't concern you." "Like hell it doesn't concern me," I said, my anger and fear overriding my caution. "I've been worried sick about you. Burner phones, coded messages, rope and duct tape. What is going on, Michael?" Before he could answer, we heard a noise from upstairs. Footsteps, heavy and purposeful. Emily's eyes went wide with fear. "Someone's here," she whispered. "They found us." The 3 teenagers exchanged panicked looks, and I realized with a jolt of horror that whatever they were involved in, they were in way over their heads. And now, so was I. "Hide," Emily whispered urgently, grabbing the flashlight and turning it off. "Quickly, in the basement." The boy, who I now recognized as one of Michael's classmates from school, nodded and darted toward a door under the stairs. Michael hesitated, looking at me. "You too," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Come on." I followed them down into the basement, my heart pounding. It was dark and musty, filled with old furniture and boxes. We huddled behind an old sofa, listening as the footsteps grew louder overhead. "Who do you think it is?" the boy whispered. I don't know, Emily replied, her voice trembling. But they know we're here. They must have tracked us. Tracked you how? I asked, trying to keep my voice down. Who are they? Emily and Michael exchanged a look in the dim light filtering through a small window near the ceiling. It's complicated, Michael said finally. Really complicated. We don't have time for complicated, I retorted, my frustration and fear boiling over. I found the receipt, Michael. Rope, duct tape, a utility knife. What were you planning to do with those things? Emily's eyes widened. You didn't, she said, turning to Michael. You didn't bring them here, did you? I had to, he replied defensively. It was part of the plan. What plan? I demanded. What is going on here? Before anyone could answer, we heard the basement door creak open. Light flooded down the stairs, and we all held our breath. I know you're down here, a voice called out. It was deep, menacing, and unfamiliar. It's time to come out. There's nowhere left to run. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, her face pale with terror. The boy looked like he might be sick. Michael, however, stood up slowly, stepping out from behind the sofa. Let them go, he said, his voice surprisingly steady. They don't know anything. It's me you want. Michael, no, Emily cried, but he held up a hand to silence her. A figure appeared at the bottom of the stairs, silhouetted against the light. It was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with something that looked like a gun in his hand. Smart boy, the man said, but it's not that simple. You all know too much. As he raised the gun, I did the only thing I could think of. I pushed Michael out of the way and yelled for the others to run. Chaos erupted as the boy and Emily scrambled for the basement's exterior door. The man turned toward me, his expression furious. Big mistake, he said, raising the gun again. But before he could fire, there was a commotion from upstairs, shouting, footsteps, the sound of a struggle. The man hesitated, looking toward the stairs, and that was all the opening Michael needed. He launched himself at the man, knocking the gun from his hand. I grabbed Emily and the boy, shoving them toward the outside door. Go! Now! We burst out into the night, not stopping until we reached my car. As we piled in and sped away, I looked back at the house to see flashing lights. Police, arriving just in time. But as we drove away, I knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. We had escaped, but we were still in danger, and I still didn't know the full story of what Michael had gotten himself into, or why. We drove in silence for several minutes, the adrenaline slowly wearing off and leaving in its place a bone-deep exhaustion and fear. I headed toward the police station, knowing that was the safest place for us right now. Who was that man? I asked finally, breaking the silence. And why did he want to hurt you? Emily and Michael exchanged another look, and I could feel the weight of unspoken words between them. It's a long story, Emily said quietly, and it starts with my father. Your father? I thought he died of a heart attack. That's what everyone thinks, she replied, her voice bitter. But that's not what really happened. As she spoke, the pieces started to fall into place. The mysterious circumstances of Mr. Miller's death, the family's sudden departure, the coded messages and burner phones. It was all connected. My father wasn't just a businessman, Emily continued. He was involved in some dangerous things with dangerous people. When he decided he wanted out, they made sure he couldn't leave. You mean they killed him? The boy asked, his voice small. Emily nodded. They made it look like a heart attack, but my mother and I knew the truth. We went into hiding, changed our names, tried to start over. But they found us. Who's they? I asked, glancing at Michael. The same people who were at the house tonight, Michael said, taking over the story. They're part of a criminal organization. My dad, my biological dad, he was involved with them too, before he died. I stared at him, shocked. Your father? But Sarah said, he died in a car accident, Michael finished. That's what everyone thinks. But it wasn't an accident. He was trying to get away from them, just like Emily's dad. I pulled into the police station parking lot, turning off the engine but not getting out yet. So what were you doing at that house tonight? And what about the rope and duct tape? We were trying to get evidence, Emily explained. My father hid something there before he died, proof of what the organization was doing. We needed to find it and turn it over to the authorities. The rope and duct tape were for getting into a hidden room in the basement, Michael added. We didn't want to damage anything, so we were trying to be careful. I shook my head, trying to process it all. Why didn't you tell us? We could have helped. We couldn't, Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. They threatened to hurt you and Sarah if I told anyone. I had to protect you. My heart ached at his words. All this time I thought he was pushing me away, but really, he was trying to protect us. We need to go in there, I said, nodding toward the police station. Tell them everything. But as we got out of the car, Emily's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, her face going pale. "What is it?" Michael asked. "It's my mother," she whispered. "She's been taken." The next few hours were a blur of police interviews, phone calls, and mounting fear. Emily's mother had been taken from their hiding place, a small apartment in a town 2 hours away. There was no note, no ransom demand, just evidence of a struggle and a single chilling message left on the mirror. "We have what you love. Come alone." The police were doing what they could, but we all knew it wasn't enough. This organization was powerful, with connections that reached far and wide. They had resources beyond what local law enforcement could match. As we sat in a sterile interview room at the police station, a detective walked in with a grim expression. "We've identified the man from the house," he said, sliding a photo across the table. "Name's Marcus Thorne, known associate of the organization you mentioned. He's been arrested, but he's not talking." "What about Emily's mother?" Michael asked, his voice tight. "No sign of her yet. We've put out an alert, but—" He didn't need to finish. We all knew what he meant. The chances of finding her were slim, and getting slimmer with every passing minute. "There's something else," the detective continued, looking directly at Michael. "We found this on him." He pushed another photo across the table. It was a picture of Sarah, taken outside her work just that morning. Underneath it, written in red ink, were the words, "Tell him to bring us what we want, or she's next." My blood ran cold. They knew about Sarah. They were watching us. This was much bigger and more dangerous than we had imagined. Michael's face went white, then hardened with determination. "I have to go," he said, standing up. "Go where?" I asked, grabbing his arm. "Michael, you can't. This is exactly what they want." "I have to," he insisted, pulling away. "They have Emily's mother. Now they're threatening Sarah. I have to end this." "End it how?" the detective asked. "What do they want from you?" Michael hesitated, then looked at Emily. She nodded slightly, as if giving him permission. "My father didn't just die in that car accident," he said quietly. "He was carrying something with him that night, something the organization wanted desperately. They think I know where it is." "And do you?" I asked, my heart pounding. He nodded slowly. "I think so. My dad left me a message, encoded in a video game he gave me just before he died. I only figured it out recently." "Where is it?" the detective asked. "Hidden," Michael replied. "In a place only I would know to look, but I can't tell you where. If I do, and they find out, they'll kill Sarah and Emily's mother." "Michael, no," I pleaded. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "This is my mess. I have to clean it up." As he spoke, I saw in him not a defiant teenager, but a young man forced to grow up too soon, burdened with secrets and responsibilities no one his age should have to bear. And I knew, with a certainty that terrified me, that he was going to do something reckless, something that could get him killed. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. The police set up a protection detail for Sarah, who was understandably terrified when she learned what was happening. Emily and I stayed at the police station, working with detectives to try to figure out where Michael might have gone and what he was planning. "He left this," Emily said, handing me a note she'd found in her pocket. It was from Michael, written in a hurry. "I'm sorry," it read. "I have to do this alone. It's the only way to keep everyone safe. If I don't make it back, tell Sarah I love her, and tell you, thank you for trying to be a father to me." Tears welled in my eyes as I read the words. All this time, I thought he resented me, but underneath it all, he had accepted me, appreciated me. And now he was walking into danger, possibly to his death, to protect us. "We have to find him," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "before it's too late." The note wasn't much to go on, but combined with what we knew about his father and the organization, the police were able to piece together a likely scenario. Michael was going to retrieve whatever his father had hidden and use it as leverage to get Emily's mother back and ensure Sarah's safety. The question was where he had hidden it. According to Emily, Michael's father had been a programmer, a tech genius who had developed some kind of software or algorithm that the organization wanted to use for illegal activities. When he tried to back out, they had him killed. He would have hidden it somewhere digital, Emily explained. Somewhere that looked innocuous, but could only be accessed with the right key. The video game, I realized. He said his father left him a message in a video game. Emily nodded. It's called Starlight Odyssey, an old game from the 90s. Michael's father loved retro games. The police tech experts got to work, trying to find a copy of the game and figure out what kind of message Michael's father might have hidden in it. Meanwhile, I was going out of my mind with worry. Every time my phone rang, my heart leaped into my throat, fearing it would be bad news. Around midnight, we got a break. A security camera near the old Miller place had caught Michael's car leaving around the time we'd escaped. He was heading east, toward the industrial part of town. "He's going to the old software company where his father used to work," Emily said, recognizing the route. "It's been abandoned for years, but there's still a server room there. That must be where he hid whatever he's looking for." The police organized a team to head to the building, but I insisted on going with them. I couldn't just wait around, not knowing what was happening to Michael. As we drove through the empty streets, I prayed we weren't too late. I had only known Michael for 3 years, but in that time, he had become more than just my stepson. He was family, and I would do whatever it took to bring him home safely. The old software company building loomed ahead of us, dark and imposing against the night sky. The police parked a block away, organizing their approach with quiet efficiency. I stayed in the car, as instructed, but my heart was pounding with every beat. "We've got movement on the 3rd floor," one of the officers said into his radio. "Multiple individuals. Looks like a confrontation is in progress." My blood ran cold. They were here, Michael was here, and something was happening. "I'm going in," I said, opening the car door. "Sir, you can't," one of the officers protested. "It's too dangerous." "I have to," I insisted. "He's my son." The officer looked at me for a moment, then nodded. "Stay behind me, and do exactly as I say." We approached the building cautiously, entering through a side door that had been forced open. The interior was dark and dusty, filled with old office equipment and furniture. As we made our way up the stairs to the 3rd floor, we could hear voices, angry, urgent. "You should have just given us what we wanted, kid," a deep voice said. "Now things are going to get messy." "I'll never help you," Michael's voice replied, strained but defiant. "Not after what you did to my father, and to Emily's father." "They knew the risks," another voice said. "As do you. Last chance. Where is it?" "Go to hell," Michael spat, and then I heard the sound of a struggle. The officer with me signaled to the others, and we burst into the room. It was chaos. Michael on the floor, 2 men standing over him, and a 3rd man at a computer terminal, typing furiously. "Police, freeze," the officer shouted, and the men turned surprised. In that moment of distraction, Michael kicked out, tripping one of the men. The officer with me fired a warning shot, and the men froze, hands raised. Other officers swarmed into the room, securing the suspects. I rushed to Michael's side, helping him up. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," he said, wincing as he put weight on his ankle. "But they got into the system. They're downloading the files." We turned to the man at the computer who was still typing, a USB drive in his hand. Before anyone could stop him, he pulled the drive from the computer and smashed it on the floor. "Too late," he said with a smirk. "I already sent it to our servers." Michael's face fell, and I could see the despair in his eyes. All this for nothing. But then, one of the tech experts who had come with us knelt by the smashed USB drive, examining it carefully. "I don't think so," she said, looking up with a small smile. "This isn't a standard USB drive. It's a dummy. The real data must still be on the server." Michael's eyes widened in understanding. Of course. My father would have anticipated this. He built in a failsafe. As the police led the men away in handcuffs, Michael limped over to the computer terminal, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, too fast for me to follow. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Activating the failsafe," he replied, not looking away from the screen. "My father designed it to wipe the servers if anyone tried to access the data without the proper authorization. It's irreversible." He typed in a final command, then hit enter with a flourish. The screen went black, then displayed a single message: "Data wiped. System secure." Michael leaned back in the chair, a look of relief on his face. "It's over," he said quietly. "It's finally over." But as we stood there catching our breath, my phone rang. It was Sarah, and her voice on the other end was panicked. "They have Emily's mother," she said. "They just called. They want to trade her for the data Michael's father hid." The relief I had felt moments ago evaporated, replaced by a cold dread. Even though we had wiped the servers, the organization didn't know that. They still thought they had leverage, and they were willing to use Emily's mother to get what they wanted. "We need to call the police," I said, but Michael was already shaking his head. "No," he said firmly. "If they find out the data is gone, they might hurt her. We need to play along, at least until we know she's safe." "But how?" I asked. We don't have the data anymore. Michael thought for a moment, then his expression changed. We give them what they think they want, he said slowly. A fake version of the data, something that looks real, but doesn't actually work. Can you do that? I asked, impressed by his quick thinking. He nodded. My father taught me a few things before he died. I can create something that looks convincing enough to buy us some time. As Michael worked on creating a fake version of the data, I coordinated with the police to set up a meeting with the organization. They agreed to a trade, the data for Emily's mother, at a neutral location, a warehouse by the docks. The next few hours were a tense blur of preparation. Michael worked tirelessly, creating a sophisticated-looking program that appeared to be what the organization wanted, but was actually just a shell. The police organized a tactical team, setting up snipers and surveillance around the warehouse. Around dawn, we got the call. The trade was on. Emily and I would go in with the fake data while the police waited nearby, ready to move in at the right moment. I should be the one going, Michael argued, but I shook my head. You've done enough, I said firmly. Let me handle this. It's time someone else took care of you for a change. He looked at me, his expression softening. Be careful, he said, and for the first time I heard genuine concern in his voice. I will. I promised. We all will. As we prepared to leave, Emily approached me, her face pale but determined. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything. For helping Michael, for helping me. We're family, I replied, and realized as I said it that I meant it. Despite everything that had happened, we had become a family, bound together by danger and love. The drive to the warehouse was silent, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I kept glancing at Emily, marveling at her strength and resilience. She had been through so much in her young life, yet here she was, facing down danger to save her mother. When we arrived at the warehouse, the sun was just beginning to rise, casting a pale light over the docks. The building was massive, rusted and weathered by years of exposure to the sea air. As we approached, a figure emerged from the shadows. You have the data? He asked, his voice rough. We have it, I replied, holding up the USB drive. Where is she? Inside, the man said, gesturing toward the warehouse. But first, let me see the data. I handed him the drive and he plugged it into a laptop, his eyes scanning the screen. After a moment, he nodded. It looks legitimate, he said. Bring her out. 2 more men emerged from the warehouse, half carrying a woman between them. Even disheveled and bruised, I could see the resemblance to Emily. The same dark hair, the same determined set to her jaw. Emily cried, rushing forward. Emily, what are you doing here? Her mother asked, her voice weak. I'm here to save you, Emily replied, hugging her tightly. As they embraced, I gave the signal to the police. Within seconds, the area was swarming with officers, weapons drawn. The men who had brought Emily's mother out surrendered without a fight, but I knew there were likely more inside the warehouse. Stay with your mother, I told Emily, then followed the police into the building. The interior of the warehouse was dark and cavernous, filled with crates and shipping containers. As we moved deeper inside, I could hear voices shouting, the sound of a struggle. I stayed close to the officers, my heart pounding with each step. We found them in a back office. 3 more men surrounded by police. Among them was a face I recognized from the news. Viktor Rostov, a known crime boss with ties to the organization Michael's father had been involved in. Well, Rostov said, a smirk on his face as he saw me. The concerned stepfather. I must say I'm impressed by your dedication. Where's the rest of your operation? One of the officers demanded. Rostov laughed. You think this is it? This is just one small piece of a much larger puzzle. You may have won this battle, but the war is far from over. As he was led away in handcuffs, I felt a chill run down my spine. He was right. This wasn't over. We had stopped this part of the organization, but there were undoubtedly others, still out there, still dangerous. But as I walked out of the warehouse and saw Emily helping her mother to a waiting ambulance, I knew that for now, at least, we had won. We had faced down danger and come out the other side, together. And as Michael arrived, running toward us with a look of relief on his face, I realized that despite everything that had happened, we had become something stronger than blood or biology. We had become a family. The aftermath of the warehouse incident was a whirlwind of police interviews, medical checkups, and media attention. Emily and her mother were taken to a safe house under police protection, while Michael and I were debriefed extensively about everything that had happened Sarah arrived at the police station as soon as she could, wrapping Michael in a hug so tight he complained he couldn't breathe. Seeing them together, I felt a pang of something. Jealousy maybe, or just the lingering insecurity of not quite belonging. But then Sarah turned to me, her eyes filled with tears, and pulled me into a hug as well. "Thank you," she whispered, "for bringing him back to us." "He brought himself back," I replied, but I was grateful for her words nonetheless. In the days that followed, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The organization Michael's father had been involved in was dismantled, piece by piece, as the information Michael had provided led investigators to other operations around the country. Victor Rostov and his associates were charged with a litany of crimes, from racketeering to murder. Emily and her mother were relocated to a new city with new identities, but we promised to stay in touch. Michael and Emily said their goodbyes with a mix of sadness and hope, promising to visit when it was safe. As for Michael and me, something had shifted between us. The walls he had built around himself were gone, replaced by a tentative trust that was growing stronger each day. We talked, really talked, about his father, about the secrets he had kept, about the fear he had lived with for so long. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," he said one evening, as we sat in the living room. "I wanted to, but I was scared. I didn't want to put you and Sarah in danger." "I understand," I replied, "but you don't have to carry these burdens alone anymore. We're here for you no matter what." He nodded, and I could see the relief in his eyes. "I know," he said quietly, "and I'm glad. Life wasn't perfect, of course. There were still trust issues to work through, still moments of tension and misunderstanding. But we were facing them together, as a family. One evening, about a month after everything had happened, Michael came to me with a box. "My father left this for me," he said, handing it to me. "I think he would have wanted you to have it." Inside was a collection of old video games, the same ones Michael had mentioned, the ones his father had used to hide his secrets. Tucked among them was a note, written in a familiar hand. "To whoever finds this," it read, "If you're reading this, it means my son is safe, and that the secrets I carried have finally been revealed. I'm sorry for the burden I placed on him, but I knew he was strong enough to carry it. And I hope that whoever is with him now will help him shoulder the weight. Thank you for protecting my son." Tears welled in my eyes as I read the words. A message from beyond the grave, a validation of the role I had chosen to take in Michael's life. "I think he knew," Michael said quietly, "that you would be there for me when he couldn't be." I looked at Michael, at the young man he was becoming, strong, resilient, brave. And I knew with a certainty that filled me with both pride and humility, that being his stepfather was the most important thing I would ever do. 6 months passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Michael was more open with us, sharing his thoughts and feelings in a way he never had before. He was excelling in school, particularly in computer science, following in his father's footsteps but with a determination to use his skills for good. Sarah and I grew closer too, our bond strengthened by the crisis we had faced together. We talked more about everything, our hopes, our fears, our dreams for the future, and we made time for each other, date nights and weekend getaways, reconnecting as a couple beyond our roles as parents. Emily and her mother visited once, under heavy security, and it was like no time had passed. Emily and Michael picked up right where they had left off, their friendship as strong as ever despite the distance between them. We promised to visit them soon, when things had settled down even more. But even as life returned to normal, there were reminders of what we had been through. Michael still had nightmares sometimes, waking up in a cold sweat from dreams of dark basements and menacing figures. I had them too, flashes of memory that would hit me at unexpected moments, the sound of a gun cocking, the look of fear in Emily's eyes, the satisfaction on Victor Rostov's face as he was led away in handcuffs. We were in therapy, both individually and as a family, working through the trauma we had experienced. It helped, having someone to talk to who understood the complexities of what we had been through, and it helped knowing we weren't alone in our struggles. One evening, as we sat down to dinner, Michael brought up something that had been on his mind. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what I want to do after graduation." Sarah and I exchanged a look, waiting for him to continue. "I want to go into law enforcement," he said, and I could see the determination in his eyes. "Or maybe cybersecurity. Something where I can use what I learned from my father to help people, to prevent what happened to us from happening to other families." I felt a surge of pride, mixed with a touch of fear. The idea of him putting himself in danger again was terrifying, but I also understood his need to make a difference. to turn his painful experiences into something positive. "That's a noble goal," Sarah said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "But you have time to decide. There's no rush." "I know," Michael replied. "But it feels right. Like this is what I was meant to do." As we continued our meal, talking about colleges and career paths, I reflected on how far we had come. 6 months ago, I was worried about Michael's secretive behavior, his withdrawal from the family. Now, here he was, planning his future with a sense of purpose and direction. After dinner, as Sarah and I cleaned up the kitchen, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said, "I was worried when we first got together about how you and Michael would get along. He was so resistant to having another father figure in his life." "I remember," I replied, drying a plate. "It wasn't easy at first. But you stuck with it," she continued. "Even when he pushed you away, even when it seemed hopeless, you never gave up on him. And now, look at him, he's thriving. And it's because of you." I felt a warmth spread through my chest at her words. "We did it together," I said. "It wasn't just me." "Maybe," she conceded. "But you were the constant presence he needed, the stability he was missing. You became the father he needed, even when he didn't realize he needed one." As I looked at her, at the love and trust in her eyes, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road had been long and fraught with danger, but we had made it through stronger and more united than ever before. A year after the warehouse incident, life had settled into a comfortable routine. Michael was in his senior year of high school, excelling in his classes and actively involved in a cybersecurity club he had started. He had even been accepted early decision to a university with a strong computer science program, where he planned to study cybersecurity and criminal justice. Sarah and I were more in love than ever, our relationship deepened by the challenges we had faced together. We were talking about expanding our family, about the possibility of adopting a child or becoming foster parents, wanting to provide a safe home for another child who might need one. Emily and her mother were doing well in their new life, though we missed them terribly. We video chatted regularly, and they promised to come visit for Michael's graduation. Emily had started college too, studying psychology with the goal of working with trauma survivors. One evening, as Michael and I were working on a coding project in the living room, he brought up something I wasn't expecting. "I've been thinking about my father lately," he said, his eyes focused on the computer screen. "About the man he was before he got involved with the organization." "What about him?" I asked, curious about this sudden reflection. "I found some old files of his," Michael explained. "Things he wrote before everything. He was working on something, a project to help protect kids online, to keep them safe from predators and scams." I looked at him, surprised. "I didn't know that." "Neither did I, not until recently," Michael admitted. "But it makes me wonder, who was he really? The man who got involved with criminals, or the man who wanted to protect innocent people?" "People are complicated," I said gently. "They can be both, can't they? Both good and bad, both hero and villain." Michael nodded slowly. "I guess so. It's just hard to reconcile the two images of him in my mind. The father I loved, who taught me to code and read me bedtime stories, and the man who made choices that put our family in danger. Your father made mistakes, I acknowledged. Big ones. But he also loved you, and he tried to protect you in the only way he knew how. He left you clues, resources, a way to fight back against the people he had gotten involved with. That counts for something." "I know," Michael said, turning to look at me. "And I'm grateful for that. But I'm also grateful for you, for being the stable, consistent presence I needed when everything was falling apart." I felt a lump form in my throat at his words. "I'm glad I could be there for you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Being your stepfather, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me." Michael smiled, and in that moment, I saw not a troubled teenager or a young man forced to grow up too soon, but my son, in every way that mattered. "You know," he said, turning back to the computer, "I've been working on something, a continuation of my father's project, but with more advanced security features. I want to finish what he started, to create something that can really make a difference." As he showed me the code he had been working on, I marveled at his skill, his passion, his desire to turn something painful into something positive. His father had left him a legacy of secrets and danger, but Michael was turning it into a legacy of hope and protection. And as we sat there, working side by side on a project that bridged the gap between past and present, between father and son, I knew that despite everything we had been through, we had come out the other side stronger, more resilient, and more united than ever before. 2 years later, Michael was thriving in college, already making a name for himself in the cybersecurity world. He had interned with the FBI over the summer, helping them track down cybercriminals using techniques he had developed himself. His project, a continuation of his father's work, had won several awards and was being piloted in schools across the country. Sarah and I had adopted a 6-year-old girl named Lily, whose bright eyes and infectious laugh had brought new joy into our home. Michael adored her, teaching her basic coding and sharing with her a love of technology that mirrored his own. Emily and her mother had moved back to the area, the threat from the organization now neutralized. Emily was in graduate school, studying to become a therapist, and she and Michael had rekindled their friendship, though both insisted they were just friends. Life was good, stable, peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos and danger we had faced years ago. But the memories lingered, not as sources of fear, but as reminders of how far we had come, of the strength we had found in each other. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Sarah, me, Michael home for the weekend, and Lily chattering about her day at school, Michael brought up something unexpected. "I've been offered a job," he announced, and we all turned to look at him. "Already?" Sarah asked, surprised. "You're only a sophomore. It's with the FBI," Michael explained. "A special task force focused on cybercrime and domestic terrorism. They want me to work part-time while I finish my degree, then full-time after graduation." I felt a mix of pride and concern. The FBI was a prestigious opportunity, a chance for Michael to use his skills for good, but it also meant putting himself in danger again, facing the kinds of threats we had worked so hard to escape. "That's amazing," Sarah said, her voice filled with pride. "But are you sure? It sounds like it could be dangerous." "I've thought about that a lot," Michael admitted, "but I feel like this is what I'm meant to do. I have skills that can help people, that can prevent what happened to us from happening to others. I can't just ignore that." Lily, who had been listening intently, spoke up. "Are you going to be like a superhero, Michael? Fighting bad guys on the computer?" Michael laughed, ruffling her hair. "Something like that, kiddo. But I'll be careful, I promise." As we continued our discussion, I couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Here we were again, facing the possibility of danger, of Michael putting himself in harm's way for the sake of others. But this time was different. This time, Michael was making the choice with his eyes wide open, with a full understanding of the risks and rewards. Later that evening, as Michael and I cleaned up the kitchen, he turned to me with a serious expression. "I know you're worried," he said. "About the job, about the danger." "I am," I admitted, "but I'm also proud. You've turned something so painful into something so positive. That takes courage." "I learned it from you," Michael replied, and I felt my heart swell at his words. "You faced down danger to protect me, to protect our family. You didn't hesitate. I want to be that kind of person too." "You already are," I said, pulling him into a hug. "You already are." As we stood there in the kitchen, I reflected on the journey we had taken together, from the strained relationship of step-parent and stepson to the bond of father and son, forged in crisis and strengthened by love. We had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and emerged stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. And as I looked at Michael, at the man he was becoming, brave, compassionate, determined to make a difference, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the unbreakable bonds we had forged in the fires of adversity. 5 years passed in what felt like the blink of an eye. Michael had graduated with honors, completed his training at Quantico, and was now working full-time for the FBI, leading a task force dedicated to combating cybercrime and domestic terrorism. He had made a name for himself as a brilliant strategist and technical expert, credited with preventing several major attacks and dismantling numerous criminal networks. Sarah and I had watched with pride as he grew into his role, balancing the demands of his job with a commitment to making a real difference in the world. He was happy, fulfilled, and surrounded by colleagues who respected and admired him. Lily was now 11, a bright, curious preteen with a passion for science and a fierce loyalty to her big brother. She idolized Michael, hanging on his every word when he visited, soaking up his knowledge like a sponge. Emily had completed her master's degree and was working as a therapist, specializing in trauma and PTSD. She and Michael had remained close, their friendship deepening over the years, though both insisted they were just friends. Sarah and I had our suspicions, but we kept them to ourselves, letting their relationship develop at its own pace. Our family had grown, not just in numbers but in love and connection. We faced challenges, of course, disagreements, misunderstandings, the occasional crisis, but we faced them together, drawing on the strength we had built during those dark days years ago. One evening, as we gathered for our weekly family dinner, a tradition we had maintained despite everyone's busy schedules, Michael announced something that would change our lives once again. "I've been offered a position," he said, and we all turned to look at him, "with the United Nations. A new task force focused on international cybercrime and security." There was a moment of stunned silence around the table. The UN was a huge opportunity, a chance to make a difference on a global scale, but it also meant moving away, possibly to another country. "Where?" Sarah asked finally, her voice carefully neutral. "Geneva," Michael replied. "They want me to lead the technical team. It's an incredible opportunity to work with experts from around the world, to develop systems that can protect people on a global scale." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "You're moving away?" Michael reached across the table, taking her hand. "It's not decided yet," he said gently. "I wanted to talk to all of you first, to see how you felt about it." As we discussed the possibility, a range of emotions surfaced. Pride at Michael's success, sadness at the thought of him moving away, excitement about the opportunity he had been given. Through it all, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the journey he had taken, from a troubled teenager hiding dangerous secrets to a respected expert on the world stage. Later that evening, as Michael and I sat on the porch, watching the fireflies flicker in the darkness, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you remember when you found me in the shower that day?" he asked, and I nodded, the memory still vivid after all these years. "When you heard me talking to Emily?" "I remember," I replied. "I was so worried. I had no idea what you were involved in." "I was terrified," Michael admitted. "I thought you would hate me, that you would think I was some kind of criminal, but you didn't. You gave me the benefit of the doubt, even when I didn't deserve it. You were a kid dealing with an impossible situation," I said. "Of course I was going to stand by you. That's what family does." "Even when it's not easy?" he asked, and I could hear the vulnerability in his voice. "Especially when it's not easy," I replied firmly. "Love isn't about the good times, Michael. It's about being there for each other when things are tough, when the world is falling apart around you. It's about choosing each other, over and over again, no matter what." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, I reflected on the truth of my words. Our family had been forged in crisis, tested by danger and trauma, but it had endured, growing stronger with each challenge we faced. We had chosen each other, over and over again, and in doing so, had created something unbreakable. "I'm going to take the job," Michael said finally, and I nodded, not surprised. "I know," I replied, "and you're going to be amazing at it." "But I'll miss you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "all of you." "We'll miss you too," I said, putting my arm around his shoulders. "But this isn't goodbye, Michael, it's just see you later. We'll visit, you'll visit, we'll video call every day if we have to. Distance doesn't change who we are to each other." He nodded, leaning into my embrace, and in that moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey we had taken together. From that fateful day in the bathroom to this quiet moment on the porch, we had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and built a bond that could withstand any challenge, even distance. 10 years after the warehouse incident, our family had changed in ways we never could have predicted. Michael was living in Geneva, leading the UN Cybercrime Task Force and making a real difference on the global stage. He was happy, fulfilled, and surrounded by colleagues who respected and admired him. Emily had moved to Geneva too, working as a therapist for an international organization that supported victims of trauma and violence. She and Michael had finally admitted their feelings for each other and were now engaged to be married, planning a wedding for the following summer. Sarah and I had adopted another child, a 7-year-old boy named Noah, who had brought new energy and excitement into our home. Lily was now in high school, a bright, confident young woman with a passion for social justice and a talent for debate. Our family had grown, not just in numbers, but in love and connection. We faced challenges, of course, disagreements, misunderstandings, the occasional crisis, but we faced them together, drawing on the strength we had built during those dark days years ago. One evening, as we gathered for a video call with Michael and Emily, Lily brought up something unexpected. "I've been thinking about what I want to do after graduation," she said, and we all turned to look at her. "And I think I want to go into law enforcement, like Michael." Sarah and I exchanged a look, a mix of pride and concern. We had seen the dangers Michael had faced, the sacrifices he had made, and the thought of Lily walking a similar path was both inspiring and terrifying. "Law enforcement is a noble profession," Michael said from the screen, his voice filled with pride. "But it's not easy. You need to be prepared for the challenges, the dangers, the emotional toll." "I know," Lily replied, her expression determined. "But I want to make a difference, like you do. I want to help people, to protect those who can't protect themselves." As we discussed her plans, I couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Here we were again, facing the possibility of another child entering a field that could put them in danger. But this time, there was a difference. Lily was making this choice with her eyes wide open, with a full understanding of the risks and rewards, inspired by her brother's example. After the call, as Sarah and I sat in the living room, she turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Are you worried?" she asked, and I knew she was talking about Lily. "A little," I admitted, "but I'm also proud. She wants to make a difference, to follow in Michael's footsteps. That's a testament to the kind of person he's become, to the example he's set." "He's an amazing young man," Sarah agreed, taking my hand. "And it's because of you. You never gave up on him, even when things were at their worst. You believed in him, even when he didn't believe in himself." "I just did what any father would do," I replied, but she shook her head. "Not any father," she said firmly. "You did more than that. You loved him unconditionally, even when he was pushing you away. You saw the best in him, even when he couldn't see it in himself. You gave him the stability and support he needed to become the man he is today." As we sat there, reflecting on the journey we had taken as a family, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the life we had built together. We had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and created something beautiful and strong out of the ashes of trauma and fear. The next day, as I was working in the garden, Lily came out to join me, sitting beside me on the bench. "Can I ask you something?" she said, and I nodded. "About Michael, back then, when everything happened? What do you want to know?" I asked, curious about her sudden interest. "Were you scared?" she asked, her voice quiet. "When you found out what he was involved in?" "Terrified," I admitted. "I was scared for him, for us, for everyone. But I was also determined to help him, to protect him no matter what." "Why?" she asked, and I could see the genuine curiosity in her eyes. "He wasn't your biological son. You could have walked away. Let Sarah handle it. Why did you stay?" I thought for a moment, considering how to answer. "Because family isn't about blood, Lily. It's about love, about commitment, about choosing each other over and over again, even when it's hard. Michael was my son, in every way that mattered. I loved him, and I would have done anything to protect him." She nodded, considering my words. "That's how I feel about Noah," she said finally. "He's not my biological brother, but I love him like he is. I would do anything to protect him." "Exactly," I replied, my heart swelling with pride at her words. "That's what family is all about." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, I reflected on the journey our family had taken, from the dark days of secrets and danger to the bright present of love and connection. We had faced down challenges, overcome obstacles, and built something unbreakable out of the ashes of trauma and fear. And as I looked at Lily, at the strong, compassionate young woman she was becoming, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the unbreakable bonds we had forged in the fires of adversity. 15 years after that fateful day in the bathroom, our family had grown and evolved in ways we never could have predicted. Michael and Emily were married, living in Geneva with their 2 children, a 7-year-old boy named Daniel, and a 5-year-old girl named Sophia. They were happy, fulfilled, and making a real difference in the world through their work with the UN. Lily had followed in Michael's footsteps, joining the FBI after college and specializing in cybercrime. She was brilliant, dedicated, and already making a name for herself in the field. She was happy, challenged, and surrounded by colleagues who respected and admired her. Noah was now in high school, a talented musician with a passion for social justice and a heart of gold. He looked up to his older siblings, idolizing Michael and Lily, and dreaming of making a difference in his own way. Sarah and I were older, grayer, but still deeply in love and committed to each other and our family. We had faced challenges, of course, disagreements, misunderstandings, the occasional crisis, but we had faced them together, drawing on the strength we had built during those dark days years ago. One evening, as we gathered for a family dinner, Michael and Emily and the kids were visiting for the week. Michael brought up something unexpected. "I've been thinking about my father lately," he said, and we all turned to look at him. About the man he was, the choices he made. "What about him?" Emily asked, taking his hand. "I've been working with a journalist," Michael explained. "Someone who specializes in investigative reporting. We're thinking of writing a book about my father's story, about the organization he was involved in, and what happened after." There was a moment of stunned silence around the table. It was a story that had shaped our family in so many ways, but it was also painful, filled with trauma and danger. "Why now?" Sarah asked finally, her voice carefully neutral. "Because it's time," Michael replied. "Because there are lessons to be learned from my father's story, about the dangers of getting involved with criminal organizations, about the importance of doing the right thing even when it's hard, and because I want people to know the truth about what happened, about the sacrifices he made to protect me." As we discussed the possibility, a range of emotions surfaced. Pride at Michael's desire to honor his father's memory, concern about reopening old wounds, excitement about the opportunity to share a story that could help others. Later that evening, as Michael and I sat on the porch, watching the stars, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think he would be proud of me?" he asked, and I knew he was talking about his father. "Of the man I've become, the choices I've made." "I know he would be," I replied firmly. "He would be incredibly proud of the person you are, of the family you've built, of the difference you're making in the world." "I wish he could have met Emily, the kids," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "I wish he could have seen all of this." "He has," I said gently. "In his own way, he's been with us all along, in the lessons he taught you, in the strength he gave you, in the love he had for you." Michael nodded, leaning into my embrace, and in that moment, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey we had taken together. From that fateful day in the bathroom to this quiet moment on the porch, we had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and built a bond that could withstand any challenge, even time. "You know," Michael said after a while, "I've never properly thanked you for everything you did for me, for our family." "You don't have to thank me," I replied. "Being your father has been the greatest privilege of my life." "But I want to," he insisted. "You saved me in so many ways. You gave me a future when I thought I didn't have one. You loved me when I was unlovable. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I wouldn't be the man I am today without you." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, I reflected on the truth of his words. Our relationship hadn't always been easy, but it had always been worth it. Through the challenges and the triumphs, the tears and the laughter, we had built something unbreakable, a bond that transcended biology and defied the odds. The next day, as I was watching Michael and Emily play with their children in the backyard, Sarah came out to join me, sitting beside me on the porch swing. "Look at them," she said, her voice filled with love and pride. "Our family. It's amazing, isn't it?" "It is," I agreed, my heart swelling with emotion. "More amazing than I ever could have imagined." "We've been through so much," she continued, taking my hand. "But we made it through, together. We built something beautiful out of the ashes of trauma and fear." "We did," I replied, squeezing her hand. "And we'll keep building, keep growing, keep loving, for as long as we have." As we sat there, watching our family grow and evolve, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. And as I looked at the life we had built, at the love that bound us together, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the unbreakable bonds we had forged in the fires of adversity. 20 years after that fateful day in the bathroom, our family had become a legacy of love, resilience, and service. Michael's book about his father had become a bestseller, shedding light on the dangers of organized crime and inspiring others to make positive choices in their own lives. He and Emily were still in Geneva, now leading the UN's cybercrime efforts and raising their 3 children, Daniel, Sophia, and a youngest 10-year-old James. Lily had risen through the ranks of the FBI, now leading a task force focused on domestic terrorism and cybercrime. She was respected, admired, and making a real difference in the world, following in her brother's footsteps but carving her own path. Noah had found his own way to make a difference, using his musical talents to raise awareness about social justice issues. He had founded a nonprofit that brought music education to underserved communities and had become a passionate advocate for change. Sarah and I were now grandparents, enjoying the slower pace of retirement but still deeply involved in our families' lives. We had faced challenges, of course, disagreements, misunderstandings, the occasional crisis, but we had faced them together, drawing on the strength we had built during those dark days years ago. One evening, as we gathered for a family dinner, everyone was home for the holidays. Michael brought up something unexpected. "I've been offered a position," he said, and we all turned to look at him. "Back in the States, Director of Cybersecurity for the Department of Homeland Security." There was a moment of stunned silence around the table. It was a huge opportunity, a chance to make a difference on a national scale, but it also meant uprooting his family, leaving the life they had built in Geneva. "Are you considering it?" Sarah asked finally, her voice carefully neutral. "I am," Michael admitted. "It's an incredible opportunity to serve our country, to use my skills to protect people on a massive scale. But it's also a big change for Emily and the kids." As we discussed the possibility, a range of emotions surfaced. Pride at Michael's success, sadness at the thought of him moving so far away, excitement about the opportunity he had been given. Later that evening, as Michael and I sat in the study looking through old photo albums, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you remember when you found me in the shower that day?" he asked, and I nodded, the memory still vivid after all these years. "When you heard me talking to Emily?" "I remember," I replied. "I was so worried. I had no idea what you were involved in." "I was so scared," Michael admitted. "I thought you would hate me, that you would think I was some kind of criminal. But you didn't. You gave me the benefit of the doubt, even when I didn't deserve it." "You were a kid dealing with an impossible situation," I said. "Of course I was going to stand by you. That's what family does." "Even when it's not easy?" he asked, and I could hear the vulnerability in his voice, even after all these years. "Especially when it's not easy," I replied firmly. "Love isn't about the good times, Michael. It's about being there for each other when things are tough, when the world is falling apart around you. It's about choosing each other, over and over again, no matter what." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, surrounded by memories of our journey together, I reflected on the truth of my words. Our family had been forged in crisis, tested by danger and trauma, but it had endured, growing stronger with each challenge we faced. We had chosen each other over and over again, and in doing so, had created something unbreakable. "I'm going to take the job," Michael said finally, and I nodded, not surprised. "I know," I replied, "and you're going to be amazing at it. But I'm going to miss this," he said, gesturing to the photo album. "Being close, being able to just drop by, to be together." "We'll make it work," I said, putting my arm around his shoulders. "We always do. Distance doesn't change who we are to each other, Michael. It doesn't change the fact that we're family." He nodded, leaning into my embrace, and in that moment I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey we had taken together. From that fateful day in the bathroom to this quiet moment in the study, we had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and built a bond that could withstand any challenge, even distance. The next day, as I was watching Michael and Emily play with their children in the backyard, Sarah came out to join me, sitting beside me on the porch swing. "Look at them," she said, her voice filled with love and pride. "Our family. It's amazing, isn't it?" "It is," I agreed, my heart swelling with emotion. "More amazing than I ever could have imagined." "We've been through so much," she continued, taking my hand. "But we made it through, together. We built something beautiful out of the ashes of trauma and fear." "We did," I replied, squeezing her hand. "And we'll keep building, keep growing, keep loving, for as long as we have." As we sat there, watching our family grow and evolve, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. And as I looked at the life we had built, at the love that bound us together, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the unbreakable bonds we had forged in the fires of adversity. 25 years after that fateful day in the bathroom, our family had become a testament to the power of love, resilience, and second chances. Michael was now the Director of Cybersecurity for the Department of Homeland Security, leading national efforts to protect against cyber threats and terrorism. He and Emily were living in Washington, D.C., raising their 4 children, Daniel, Sophia, James, and their youngest 8-year-old Emma. Lily had been promoted to Deputy Director of the FBI, one of the youngest people to hold that position in the Bureau's history. She was respected, admired, and making a real difference in the world, following in her brother's footsteps but carving her own path. Noah's nonprofit had grown exponentially, now operating in all 50 states and several countries abroad. He had become a passionate advocate for social justice, using his platform to raise awareness about important issues and inspire others to take action. Sarah and I were now enjoying our retirement, splitting our time between our home and visiting our children and grandchildren around the country. We had faced challenges, of course, disagreements, misunderstandings, the occasional crisis, but we had faced them together, drawing on the strength we had built during those dark days years ago. One evening, as we gathered for a family dinner, everyone was home for the holidays, Michael brought up something unexpected. "I've been thinking about retiring," he said, and we all turned to look at him, surprised. "In a few years, after Emma graduates high school, I think it's time to pass the torch to the next generation." There was a moment of stunned silence around the table. Michael had dedicated his life to public service, to making a difference in the world. The idea of him stepping away from that work was almost unthinkable. "Why now?" Sarah asked finally, her voice carefully neutral. "Because it's time," Michael replied. "I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm proud of the work I've done. But I want to spend more time with Emily, with the kids. I want to enjoy the next chapter of our life together." As we discussed his plans, a range of emotions surfaced. Pride at all he had accomplished, understanding of his desire to focus on his family, a touch of sadness at the thought of him stepping away from the work he loved. Later that evening, as Michael and I sat in the study, looking through old photo albums, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about that day?" he asked, and I knew immediately what he was referring to. "The day you caught me in the shower?" "All the time," I admitted. "It was the day that changed everything, wasn't it?" "It was," Michael agreed. "The day my life split in two, before and after. Before I was a scared kid carrying a dangerous secret. After I was a scared kid who had been found out, who had to face the consequences of my choices." "You faced them with courage," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You made difficult choices, choices that put you in danger but protected others. That takes a kind of strength most people never have to find." "I learned it from you," Michael replied, and my heart swelled at his words. "From watching you face down danger to protect our family, from seeing you stand up for what was right even when it was hard. You taught me what it means to be a man, to be a father, to be a person of integrity." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, surrounded by memories of our journey together, I reflected on the truth of his words. Our relationship hadn't always been easy, but it had always been worth it. Through the challenges and the triumphs, the tears and the laughter, we had built something unbreakable, a bond that transcended biology and defied the odds. "You know," Michael said after a while, "I've been thinking about what comes next. After I retire, I mean. What are you thinking?" I asked, curious about his plans. "I want to start a foundation," he explained, "something that helps kids who are in difficult situations, kids who are dealing with the kinds of things I dealt with. I want to give them the support and resources they need to make better choices, to build better futures." "That's an amazing idea," I said, my heart swelling with pride. "Your father would be so proud of the man you've become, of the legacy you're building." "I hope so," Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I've tried to live my life in a way that would honor him, that would make up for the mistakes he made. And I've tried to be the kind of father you were to me, present, supportive, loving, no matter what." "You've been an incredible father," I said firmly, "and an incredible son. I couldn't be prouder of you if I tried." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, I reflected on the journey we had taken together. From that fateful day in the bathroom to this quiet moment in the study, we had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and built a bond that could withstand any challenge, even time. The next day, as I was watching Michael and Emily play with their children in the backyard, Sarah came out to join me, sitting beside me on the porch swing. "Look at them," she said, her voice filled with love and pride. "Our family. It's amazing, isn't it?" "It is," I agreed, my heart swelling with emotion. "More amazing than I ever could have imagined. We've been through so much," she continued, taking my hand, "but we made it through together. We built something beautiful out of the ashes of trauma and fear. We did, I replied, squeezing her hand, and we'll keep building, keep growing, keep loving, for as long as we have. As we sat there, watching our family grow and evolve, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. And as I looked at the life we had built, at the love that bound us together, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the unbreakable bonds we had forged in the fires of adversity. 30 years after that fateful day in the bathroom, our family had become a legacy of love, service, and resilience. Michael had retired from government service and founded the Miller Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping at-risk youth make positive choices and build better futures. The foundation had helped thousands of kids across the country, giving them the support and resources they needed to overcome difficult circumstances. Michael and Emily were now living back in our hometown close to Sarah and me. Their children were grown. Daniel was following in his father's footsteps, studying cybersecurity at MIT. Sophia was a talented artist, using her work to raise awareness about social issues. James was in medical school, planning to work with underserved communities, and Emma was in high school, already showing a passion for activism and social justice. Lily had become the director of the FBI, the first woman to hold that position in the Bureau's history. She was respected, admired, and making a real difference in the world, leading the agency with integrity and vision. Noah's nonprofit had become a global movement, bringing music education and arts programming to millions of children around the world. He had become a passionate advocate for the arts, using his platform to inspire others and create positive change. Sarah and I were now in our 70s, enjoying our retirement and the precious time we had with our family. We had faced challenges, of course, disagreements, misunderstandings, the occasional crisis, but we had faced them together, drawing on the strength we had built during those dark days years ago. One evening, as we gathered for a family dinner, everyone was home for the holidays. Michael brought up something unexpected. "I've been thinking about my father lately," he said, and we all turned to look at him. About the man he was, the choices he made, the legacy he left behind. "What about him?" Emily asked, taking his hand. "I want to rename the foundation," Michael explained. "I want to call it the Miller Morris Foundation, to honor both my fathers, the one who brought me into this world, and the one who raised me, who taught me what it means to be a man of integrity." There was a moment of stunned silence around the table, and I felt tears welling in my eyes. To be included in the legacy, to have my name alongside his father's, was an honor I never could have imagined. "Are you sure?" I asked finally, my voice thick with emotion. "I've never been more sure of anything," Michael replied, his eyes meeting mine. "You've been my father in every way that matters. You loved me when I was unlovable, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and taught me what it means to be a good man. It's because of you that I am the person I am today." As we sat there, surrounded by our family, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey we had taken together. From that fateful day in the bathroom to this moment of honor and recognition, we had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and built a bond that could withstand any challenge, even time. Later that evening, as Michael and I sat in the study, looking through old photo albums, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked, and I looked at him confused, becoming my stepfather, taking on all the baggage that came with me. "Never," I replied firmly. "Not for a single moment. Being your father has been the greatest privilege of my life. Even with all the danger, all the worry," he pressed. "Especially with all the danger and worry," I said. "Those challenges brought us closer, made our bond stronger. They taught us what we were made of, what we were willing to do for each other. I wouldn't trade a single moment of it, because it brought us to where we are today." Michael nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I love you, Dad," he said, and my heart swelled at the words. "I've always loved you, even when I was too stubborn or scared to say it." "I love you too, son," I replied, pulling him into a hug. "More than you'll ever know." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, surrounded by memories of our journey together, I reflected on the truth of my words. Our relationship hadn't always been easy, but it had always been worth it. Through the challenges and the triumphs, the tears and the laughter, we had built something unbreakable, a bond that transcended biology and defied the odds. The next day, as I was watching Michael and Emily play with their grandchildren in the backyard, Sarah came out to join me, sitting beside me on the porch swing. "Look at them," she said, her voice filled with love and pride. "Our family. It's amazing, isn't it?" "It is," I agreed, my heart swelling with emotion. "More amazing than I ever could have imagined. We've been through so much," she continued, taking my hand. "But we made it through, together. We built something beautiful out of the ashes of trauma and fear." "We did," I replied, squeezing her hand. "And we'll keep building, keep growing, keep loving, for as long as we have." As we sat there watching our family grow and evolve, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. And as I looked at the life we had built, at the love that bound us together, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the unbreakable bonds we had forged in the fires of adversity. 35 years after that fateful day in the bathroom, our family had become a legacy of love, service, and resilience that spanned generations. The Miller Morris Foundation had grown exponentially, now operating in all 50 states and several countries abroad, helping millions of at-risk youth make positive choices and build better futures. Michael and Emily were now enjoying their retirement, splitting their time between our hometown and traveling the world to visit the foundation's various programs. Their children were all grown and making their own marks on the world. Daniel was leading a cybersecurity firm that worked with nonprofits to protect vulnerable populations. Sophia had become a renowned artist whose work was featured in galleries around the world. James was a doctor working in underserved communities abroad, and Emma had followed in her aunt's footsteps, joining the FBI and specializing in cybercrime. Lily had also retired from the FBI, now serving as a consultant for law enforcement agencies around the world and mentoring the next generation of agents. She was respected, admired, and still making a difference in the world, sharing her wisdom and experience with others. Noah's nonprofit had become a global movement, bringing music education and arts programming to millions of children around the world. He had become a passionate advocate for the arts, using his platform to inspire others and create positive change. Sarah and I were now in our 80s, enjoying our retirement and the precious time we had with our family, which now included great-grandchildren. We had faced challenges, of course, disagreements, misunderstandings, the occasional crisis, but we had faced them together, drawing on the strength we had built during those dark days years ago. One evening, as we gathered for a family dinner, everyone was home for the holidays, Michael brought up something unexpected. "I've been thinking about writing another book," he said, and we all turned to look at him. "About our family, about the journey we've taken together." "What kind of book?" Sarah asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "A memoir, of sorts," Michael explained. "About that day in the bathroom and everything that came after. About the choices we made, the challenges we faced, the love that bound us together. I think it's a story that could help others, that could show people that no matter how dark things seem, there's always hope, always a way forward." As we discussed his plans, a range of emotions surfaced. Pride at his desire to share our story, concern about revisiting painful memories, excitement about the opportunity to inspire others. Later that evening, as Michael and I sat in the study, looking through old photo albums, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" he asked, and I knew immediately what he was referring to. "If you hadn't caught me in the shower that day?" "All the time," I admitted. "I wonder what would have happened if I had come home later, or earlier, or not at all. Would you have found another way out of the situation you were in? Would you have been able to protect Emily and her mother on your own?" "I don't know," Michael replied quietly. "I'd like to think I would have figured something out eventually, but I was so scared. So in over my head. I think I needed you, even if I didn't realize it at the time." "We all need someone," I said gently. "Someone who believes in us, who stands by us no matter what. I'm glad I could be that person for you." "You were more than that," Michael insisted. "You were my rock, my anchor in the storm. You gave me stability when my world was falling apart, love when I felt unlovable, hope when I saw none. I wouldn't be the man I am today without you." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, surrounded by memories of our journey together, I reflected on the truth of his words. Our relationship hadn't always been easy, but it had always been worth it. Through the challenges and the triumphs, the tears and the laughter, We had built something unbreakable, a bond that transcended biology and defied the odds. "You know," Michael said after a while, "I've been thinking about the title for the book." "What are you thinking?" I asked, curious about his ideas. "I caught my stepson in the shower. What happened next was unforgivable," he replied, and I couldn't help but laugh. "That's quite a title," I said, shaking my head. "A bit dramatic, don't you think?" "Maybe," Michael admitted with a smile. "But it's attention-grabbing, and it captures the drama of that moment. Plus, it has a double meaning." "What do you mean?" I asked, intrigued. "On one level, it refers to what you thought you were walking into, something inappropriate, something unforgivable," he explained. "But on another level, it refers to what happened after, the danger, the secrets, the choices we all had to make. Things that, in a different context, might have been unforgivable, but that ultimately brought us together, made us stronger." "I like that," I said, my heart swelling with pride at his insight. "I like that a lot." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, I reflected on the journey we had taken together. From that fateful day in the bathroom to this quiet moment in the study, we had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and built a bond that could withstand any challenge, even time. The next day, as I was watching Michael and Emily play with their great-grandchildren in the backyard, Sarah came out to join me, sitting beside me on the porch swing. "Look at them," she said, her voice filled with love and pride. "Our family. It's amazing, isn't it?" "It is," I agreed, my heart swelling with emotion. "More amazing than I ever could have imagined. We've been through so much," she continued, taking my hand. "But we made it through, together. We built something beautiful out of the ashes of trauma and fear." "We did," I replied, squeezing her hand. "And we'll keep building, keep growing, keep loving, for as long as we have." As we sat there watching our family grow and evolve, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. And as I looked at the life we had built, at the love that bound us together, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the unbreakable bonds we had forged in the fires of adversity. 40 years after that fateful day in the bathroom, our family had become a legacy that spanned generations, a testament to the power of love, resilience, and second chances. Michael's book, I Caught My Stepson in the Shower, What Happened Next Was Unforgivable, had become a bestseller, inspiring countless families facing their own challenges, and reminding them that no matter how dark things seem, there's always hope, always a way forward. The Miller Morris Foundation had become one of the most respected nonprofit organizations in the country, helping millions of at-risk youth make positive choices and build better futures. Michael and Emily were now enjoying a well-deserved retirement, watching with pride as their children and grandchildren continued their work and carried on their legacy. Lily was also enjoying her retirement, splitting her time between consulting for law enforcement agencies and mentoring young agents. She had written her own book about her experiences in the FBI, becoming a respected voice in law enforcement and a role model for women in the field. Noah's nonprofit had become a global movement, bringing music education and arts programming to millions of children around the world. He had become a passionate advocate for the arts, using his platform to inspire others and create positive change. Sarah and I were now in our 90s, enjoying our retirement and the precious time we had with our family, which now included great-great-grandchildren. We had faced challenges, of course, disagreements, misunderstandings, the occasional crisis, but we had faced them together, drawing on the strength we had built during those dark days years ago. One evening, as we gathered for a family dinner, everyone was home for the holidays. Michael brought up something unexpected. "I've been thinking about that day a lot lately," he said, and we all turned to look at him. "The day you caught me in the shower. Do you know what I remember most about it?" "What?" I asked, curious about his perspective after all these years. "Your face," Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. "The look on your face when you realized what was happening, not what you thought was happening, but what was really happening. It wasn't anger or judgment, it was concern. Fear for me. Even then, even when you thought I was doing something wrong, your first instinct was to protect me." Tears welled in my eyes at his words, at the memory of that moment and all that had followed. "Of course," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "That's what family does. We protect each other no matter what." You taught me that, Michael insisted. You taught me what it means to be a family, to love unconditionally, to stand by each other through thick and thin. It's the greatest lesson you ever taught me, and it's one I've tried to pass on to my own children, my own grandchildren. As we sat there, surrounded by our family, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey we had taken together. From that fateful day in the bathroom to this moment of reflection and gratitude, we had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and built a bond that could withstand any challenge, even time. Later that evening, as Michael and I sat in the study, looking through old photo albums, he turned to me with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had just walked away that day?" he asked, and I knew immediately what he was referring to. If you had decided it was too much, too complicated, too dangerous? Sometimes, I admitted, but I could never have actually done it. Even when I was scared, even when I didn't understand what was happening, I knew I couldn't abandon you. You were my son, and I loved you, and that was all that mattered. That love saved me, Michael said quietly. It saved all of us. It gave me the strength to make the right choices, to face down danger, to build a better life. It's the foundation of everything I am, everything our family has become. As we sat there in the comfortable silence, surrounded by memories of our journey together, I reflected on the truth of his words. Our relationship hadn't always been easy, but it had always been worth it. Through the challenges and the triumphs, the tears and the laughter, we had built something unbreakable, a bond that transcended biology and defied the odds. You know, Michael said after a while, I've been thinking about the title of my book again. Oh, I asked, curious about his thoughts. I think the unforgivable part isn't about what you thought was happening in the shower, he explained, and it's not about the danger and secrets that came after. I think it's about the love. The love? I asked, confused. Yeah, Michael continued, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. The kind of love that stands by someone no matter what, that forgives the unforgivable, that sees the best in people, even when they can't see it in themselves. That's the unforgivable part. Not because it's wrong, but because it's so rare, so powerful, so transformative. It's the kind of love that changes lives, that builds legacies, that lasts forever. I nodded, my heart swelling with emotion at his insight. I like that, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I like that a lot. As we sat there in the comfortable silence, I reflected on the journey we had taken together. From that fateful day in the bathroom to this quiet moment in the study, we had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and built a bond that could withstand any challenge, even time. The next day, as I was watching Michael and Emily play with their great-great-grandchildren in the backyard, Sarah came out to join me, sitting beside me on the porch swing. "Look at them," she said, her voice filled with love and pride. "Our family. It's amazing, isn't it?" "It is," I agreed, my heart swelling with emotion. More amazing than I ever could have imagined. "We've been through so much," she continued, taking my hand. "But we made it through, together. We built something beautiful out of the ashes of trauma and fear." "We did," I replied, squeezing her hand. "And we'll keep building, keep growing, keep loving, for as long as we have." As we sat there, watching our family grow and evolve, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. And as I looked at the life we had built, at the love that bound us together, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, bound not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the unbreakable bonds we had forged in the fires of adversity. 50 years after that fateful day in the bathroom, our family had become a legacy that spanned generations, a testament to the power of love, resilience, and second chances. Michael's book had become a classic, read by families around the world, and studied in psychology and sociology classes, as an example of how love and commitment can overcome even the most daunting challenges. The Miller Morris Foundation had become one of the most respected nonprofit organizations in the world, helping tens of millions of at-risk youth make positive choices and build better futures. Michael had passed away peacefully in his sleep the year before, surrounded by his family, his legacy secure in the lives he had touched and the organization he had built. Emily was now the matriarch of our family, still sharp and engaged at 90 years old, presiding over family gatherings with grace and wisdom. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren were scattered around the world, each making their own mark in their own way, but all carrying forward the values of love, service, and resilience that had defined our family. Had also passed away a few years earlier, after a long and distinguished career in law enforcement and a fulfilling retirement mentoring the next generation of agents. Her book had become required reading at the FBI Academy, inspiring countless agents to serve with integrity and compassion. Noah's nonprofit had become a global movement, bringing music education and arts programming to hundreds of millions of children around the world. He had passed away peacefully at 95, his legacy secure in the lives he had touched and the organization he had built. Sarah had joined them a year ago, passing away peacefully in her sleep, her last words a whispered "I love you" to me. I missed her desperately, but I took comfort in the knowledge that we had lived a long and happy life together, building a family and a legacy that would endure for generations. I was now 99 years old, living in the family home surrounded by memories and love. Our family gathered often, especially for holidays and special occasions, filling the house with laughter and conversation. I had faced challenges, of course, disagreements, misunderstandings, the occasional crisis. But I had faced them with my family, by my side, drawing on the strength we had built during those dark years ago. One evening, as I sat in my favorite armchair in the study looking through old photo albums, my great-granddaughter Emma came to join me. She was now a young woman, following in her great-aunt's footsteps at the FBI, specializing in cybercrime. "Grandpa," she said, sitting on the ottoman at my feet. "Can I ask you something about that day? The day you caught Michael? In the shower?" "Of course, dear," I replied, my voice frail but clear. "What would you like to know?" "What was going through your mind when you realized what was really happening?" she asked, her eyes filled with curiosity. "When you understood that it wasn't what you thought?" I thought for a moment, my mind traveling back through the decades to that fateful day. Fear, mostly, I admitted. Fear for Michael, for Emily, for our family. But also determination. I knew in that moment that I would do whatever it took to protect them, to keep them safe no matter the cost. "Even when it was dangerous?" she pressed. "Especially when it was dangerous," I replied firmly. "Love isn't about the good times, Emma. It's about being there for each other when things are tough, when the world is falling apart around you. It's about choosing each other, over and over again, no matter what." She nodded, considering my words. "That's what Michael wrote in his book, isn't it? About the unforgivable love that changes lives, that builds legacies, that lasts forever." "It is," I agreed, my heart swelling with emotion. "And it's the greatest lesson I ever learned, the greatest gift I ever received." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, surrounded by memories of our journey together, I reflected on the truth of my words. Our family hadn't always been easy, but it had always been worth it. Through the challenges and the triumphs, the tears and the laughter, we had built something unbreakable, a bond that transcended biology and defied the odds. "You know," I said after a while, "I've been thinking about the title of Michael's book a lot lately." "Oh?" Emma asked, curious about my thoughts. "I think the unforgivable part isn't about what I thought was happening in the shower," I explained, my voice weak but filled with conviction. "And it's not about the danger and secrets that came after. I think it's about the love." "The love?" Emma asked, echoing my own confusion from years ago. "Yeah," I continued, my eyes glistening with unshed tears. "The kind of love that stands by someone no matter what, that forgives the unforgivable, that sees the best in people even when they can't see it in themselves. That's the unforgivable part. Not because it's wrong, but because it's so rare, so powerful, so transformative. It's the kind of love that changes lives, that builds legacies, that lasts forever." Emma nodded, her own eyes filling with tears. "I think you're right, Grandpa. That's exactly what it is." As we sat there in the comfortable silence, I reflected on the journey I had taken, on the family I had built, on the legacy we had created together. From that fateful day in the bathroom to this quiet moment in the study, we had faced down danger, overcome obstacles, and built a bond that could withstand any challenge, even time. The next day, as I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset over the backyard where so many family memories had been made, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but we had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. And as I looked at the life I had lived, at the love that had sustained me, I knew that whatever came next, I would face it with the knowledge that I had lived a good life, built a beautiful family, and left behind a legacy of love that would endure for generations. As I closed my eyes for the final time, surrounded by family and love, my mind traveled back through the decades to that fateful day in the bathroom. I remembered the fear, the confusion, the determination to protect my family no matter what. I remembered the challenges we had faced, the dangers we had overcome, the love that had sustained us through it all. I remembered Michael, as a troubled teenager, carrying secrets too heavy for a young person to bear. I remembered the walls he had built around himself, the mistrust in his eyes, the defiance in his stance. I remembered the moment those walls began to crumble, the moment he realized he didn't have to face his challenges alone. I remembered Emily, brave and resilient beyond her years, facing down danger to protect her mother and do what was right. I remembered the fear in her eyes, but also the determination, the strength, the courage that had inspired us all. I remembered Sarah, my rock, my partner, my love, standing by me through every challenge, every crisis, every moment of doubt. I remembered her wisdom, her compassion, her unwavering belief in our family and our ability to overcome whatever obstacles we faced. I remembered Lily and Noah, growing into strong, compassionate adults dedicated to making a difference in the world. I remembered their passion, their integrity, their commitment to carrying forward the values we had instilled in them. I remembered the generations that followed, each one building on the legacy of love, resilience, and service we had created together. I remembered the laughter, the tears, the moments of joy and sorrow that had defined our family's journey. As my consciousness faded, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the life I had lived, for the family I had built, for the love that had sustained me through it all. I had faced challenges, overcome obstacles, and created something beautiful and lasting out of the ashes of trauma and fear. And as I took my final breath, I knew with a certainty that filled me with peace, that the love we had shared, the bonds we had forged, the legacy we had created, would endure long after I was gone, touching lives and inspiring others for generations to come. The unforgivable love that had changed our lives, that had built our family, that had defined who we were, would live on, a testament to the power of choosing each other, over and over again, no matter what. And in that knowledge I found peace, contentment, and the profound satisfaction of a life well lived, a family well loved, and a legacy that would endure forever. Epilogue. 10 years after my passing, our family gathered once again at the old family home, now preserved as a museum dedicated to the Miller Morris Foundation, and the legacy of love and resilience we had created together. Emma, now a senior agent at the FBI, stood before the gathered family, her voice clear and steady as she addressed them. 50 years ago, my great-grandfather walked into a bathroom and discovered something that would change our family forever, she began. He thought he was walking into one kind of situation, but he discovered something entirely different. A young man carrying burdens too heavy for his shoulders, a family in danger, a challenge that would test them all. She paused, looking out at the faces of generations of our family, each one carrying forward the legacy of love and service we had created together. What happened next was, in many ways, unforgivable, she continued. The danger, the secrets, the choices that had to be made. In another context, these things might have torn a family apart, but for us, they brought us together. They taught us what we were made of, what we were willing to do for each other, how strong we could be when we stood together. The unforgivable part, as my great-grandfather came to understand, wasn't the danger or the secrets or the difficult choices, she said, her voice filled with emotion. The unforgivable part was the love, the kind of love that stands by someone no matter what, that forgives the unforgivable, that sees the best in people even when they can't see it in themselves. The kind of love that changes lives, that builds legacies, that lasts forever. As she spoke, I watched from beyond, my heart swelling with pride and love for the family we had created, the legacy we had built, the love that had sustained us through it all. The journey had begun with a misunderstanding in a bathroom, a moment of fear and confusion that could have torn us apart. But it had become something more, a testament to the power of love, the strength of family, the resilience of the human spirit. And as I watched our family continue to grow and evolve, carrying forward the values we had instilled in them, I knew with a certainty that transcended time and space, that the unforgivable love that had changed our lives would continue to change lives for generations to come. That was our legacy, that was our triumph, That was our unforgivable love.